welcome back to another episode of Demystifying SAP S/4HANA. I'm Faisal, SAP consultant at PwC.
And I'm Thorsten Hübsch, partner at PwC and leading the SAP practice in Belgium and the European Center for Excellence for SAP Strategy. Hey, Faisal.
Hello, Thorsten. We received a lot of feedback again from our listeners. The difference between private cloud, public cloud, it's not always that clear. That's why we want to dedicate this session, this episode, to this topic. A very interesting one. So let's kick things off. Can you briefly maybe start to explain what we mean by private cloud and public cloud in the SAP S/4HANA context?
Yes, actually this is a very confusing topic because we have only a small difference in the wording. We also see a changing wording. So we had in the past private cloud explicitly and public cloud explicitly, and all that changes quite regularly, what we are used to from SAP. But the difference behind is huge, is massive. So we can see that the private cloud offering is basically what also customers have as an on-premise software with increasing limitations which are more technically artificially introduced. So we have a number of innovations that on-premise S4 customers cannot use, that's only available in private cloud. So private cloud on-premise is basically the same product behind, and the private cloud makes part of the so-called Rise with SAP offering that runs on a dedicated environment on a single tenant. It provides much more control over the infrastructure and customizing options. So everything that you are also used to from your on-premise system or your system that is hosted with hyperscaler. The public cloud, on the other hand side, is completely different. So S/4HANA Public Cloud also makes part of a so-called Grow with SAP offering and is basically hosted on a multi-tenant. What does that mean? Multiple systems are on one technical platform behind at SAP. And it is absolutely crucial that when deciding for that option, and we will dive into that later more in detail, that you follow the standard processes of SAP. So this is not a good to do thing, but this is absolutely mandatory. And SAP at the end will manage also the whole solution end to end, including also the upgrades where you are asked to test in a test tenant before the upgrade, but the upgrade will be scheduled twice a year. With a public cloud in a public cloud scenario. So let's summarize that in a nutshell. S/4HANA Private Cloud is much more flexible, but that comes with a cost, both during implementation, but also when running the solution. S/4HANA Public Cloud asks you to stick to SAP standard functionality, and that comes with constraints, but is actually the ultimate choice when streamlining your company for efficiency and low cost in the IT operational costs. Does that make sense, Faisal?
Yes, perfect. Now they know what it means. Why is this distinction so important right now for companies considering the move to S/4HANA? Why is there this distinction between the two?
Yeah, so first of all, when we look at S4 projects, be it upgrade projects, be it greenfield projects, new installations, we often see that in companies, these projects belong to the biggest IT projects that they do for decades. So better you get the choice right from the beginning. And the choice between private and public cloud is actually heavily influenced or it influences heavily the complexity of the project, the costs, the timeline, the long-term flexibility. So companies need to align their IT strategy, their business needs, and transformation readiness with the right cloud model. So SAP actually has the public cloud as their long-term strategy. If you ask people from SAP, they will tell you by the late 2030s, we assume to have more than half of our SAP customers at the public cloud. So that's basically their ambition. Of course, a lot of people are quite skeptical. We know we have at the moment, we are celebrating 10 years of S4HANA, and we still have about 75% not yet on S4. So I think that also in another 10 years, we will not see all SAP customers or the majority of the SAP customers on public cloud. But still, if you look from a strategy, it's clear SAP goes for public cloud. And also important, when making that choice, there is absolutely no way to transition from the one to the other. So if you say you want to try public, and when it turns out after a year or two, you basically want to go then private, this is not possible, also because the underlying solutions are differing really from the code base. And the same also the other way around. So if you want to go from private to public, it's even less possible, because you have, of course, much less possibilities in public cloud than in private. So there is no transformation possibility you would need to re-implement if you make the wrong choice.
So based on what you've just said, public cloud is not for everyone then, if I understand.
Yes, this is correct, Faisal. So public cloud should be, in my opinion, the default option when you go for a greenfield implementation. So a public cloud can only be used in a greenfield option, and you really should start from the assumption, let's go public. And of course, then let's do a lot of tests and validations whether this works out. But the going in position should be, I try to go for a public cloud solution, because, as I mentioned, this is the long-term strategy. And if you can align your company strategy with the long-term strategy of SAP, even better. That means also less headache in the long term. But of course, there are a couple of industries which are not supported, not well supported, or not yet supported, that I leave a bit open here. But as we speak now, there are probably about 10 different industries which are explicitly not supported by S4HANA Public Cloud, which is, for example, oil and gas, which is public sector, which is utilities, defense and aerospace, healthcare, mining, and a number of others. So if you really want to reflect your system, your processes in the system, and you make part of these industries, you might have an even deeper look, a more detailed look, whether public cloud is even possible for you. But it's not only the industries, it's also about the countries. So there are a number of countries which are actually not fully supported. Among them are, for example, Argentina, Indonesia, Pakistan, Vietnam, Egypt. So if your company is operating in one of these countries, also here, you need to make a very detailed assessment and due diligence if you can work around the limitations that come with public cloud. And next to that, much more important actually, is your organization actually ready to fully follow, and what you see is what you get, what you see as best practice processes, as standard processes, is what you need to implement in your organization. This is usually not what SAP customers are used to. Usually we go from a very clear requirements catalog and then try to implement that. That is not possible in this way with public cloud. With public cloud, it's the other way around. Basically, the consultants and the experts will tell you what's possible, and you have to change your organization accordingly. Of course, in some areas you can say, listen, can I deviate here and there? And let's say if this is an exception, then this is fine. But if you are basically trying to deviate from that standard in every second process, then of course you will run into problems. So before you start such an endeavor, it must be you must check out if you are not basically running against the wall with your project because of internal resistance, or simply because it's not feasible in your specific organization. And there we will come later to that. there is a very concrete tool that allows you to test that upfront. But if you can manage successfully to implement the public cloud, the advantages are really on your side in terms of cost savings and agility. So then you really can count yourself as very lucky and very fortunate, because then you're spot on, one with the SAP strategy, long-term strategy, and on the other hand side, you save a lot of money in running your finance backbone, procurement backbone, sales backbone, your ERP basically.
Very interesting takeaways. Let's continue with architecture. What are the main differences in how S4HANA is deployed in a private cloud versus a public cloud model?
Yeah, I mentioned it briefly in the beginning already in big lines. So the private cloud is basically a sort of a hosting that you do. You have actually different opportunities, different options. You can go on Amazon AWS, you can go on Microsoft Azure, you can go on the Google Cloud Platform, GCP, or you can also ask SAP themselves to host the S4 system in their data centers. And then actually when we talk about private cloud and the so-called RISE offering, this is nothing else as packaging this hosting together with your usage rights, basically what you see today on-premise with your licenses, with the maintenance part, and with doing actually everything around the sub-basis services, infrastructure setup, etc. So this is all comprised in this private cloud offering when we talk about S4HANA private cloud. On public cloud, it goes a lot further because there you have actually also the standardization of the processes and the functionality inside, and you basically share the environment with different other customers. You can, of course, customize everything you want, and you can within your public cloud instance. But at the end, the underlying infrastructure is shared with other customers. And when an upgrade is done, at this moment, all customers on that infrastructure will go on the new version, which actually happens in a mandatory way twice a year. Also here we will deep dive a bit later into that.
Okay, and who typically manages the infrastructure in both models? And what implication does it have for the customer?
Yeah, so the infrastructure itself is actually in both cases managed by SAP. So SAP is your central point of contact. With private cloud, you are basically are in contact with the so-called ECS organization. ECS stands for Enterprise Cloud Services. So whatever you want to do, applying nodes or asking for an upgrade or asking for a patch, asking for opening certain ports, all that can be done with tickets that you open at the ECS organization, Enterprise Cloud Service Organization. But this is basically communicating with your sub-basis consultant. If you have today an own environment, you have one or two or sometimes also more sub-basis consultants that help you to manage database and to do exactly the things that I just mentioned. This in the future with SAP RISE will be taken care of entirely by SAP. With public cloud, it's actually fully managed. The whole SAP system is managed, meaning that customers benefit from a lot less of overhead and have to accept, on the other hand side, a predefined pace of innovation. That means, as I mentioned, twice a year, the upgrade. So you are much more, let's say, in a predefined way of how the system is run, and you don't have the decision on your side when to upgrade, as we have it in private cloud. But it's very much predefined by SAP and the organization that is completely running your system.
Based on past experiences, we noticed that a lot of companies still have highly customized SAP environments. How does that affect their decision when choosing between the two?
Yeah, that's also a very good question and a very critical question in a lot of scenarios. So actually, the question is a bit different when you start seeing you have a very we have a very customized environment. The question is, are you happy with it, and do you want to preserve these investments from the past? In this case, the only way you can do that is actually going on private cloud. If you say, I have a very customized system and I have to go anyway into a greenfield because I want to do a tabula rasa and want to start from scratch, in this moment, you have the choice to do that either on public cloud or on private cloud as you like. But a public cloud implementation is by definition always a greenfield. You cannot take anything from the past with you. The only thing that you can take with you is data. So you have the so-called data migration cockpit, which is the standard tool within S/4HANA to import data. But you cannot take with you any custom code or any configuration elements. All that needs to be done from scratch in a public cloud itself. So public cloud is then enforcing you in the implementation project to complete standardization and restricts then the modification also to ensure consistency across the different environments with other clients, because only in this, by restricting that, it's possible that you can upgrade that in an easy way, in a, I would say, industrialized way, and not every upgrade every 6 months becomes half a nightmare. So hence, SAP has to put some guardrails what you can do within your solution during customizations.
Yes, and when these customers has to choose for public cloud, does it mean that they have to give up custom developments, or is there still some flexibility for them to do?
Yeah, and this has changed quite a lot. And here we also see a lot of misunderstandings. Because like if you look a couple of years back, there was really the what you had also a bit in your question. If you go public cloud, you cannot do any customization beyond these standard processes. But this is not quite true anymore. On the one hand side, we have the so-called in-app extensibility. These are basically, I would call them lightweight extensions. You change the one or the other field on the screen. You can add also that you can add reports. You can add here and there a button with a certain functionality behind. You even can add certain logic, very high level. We see there a so-called low-code, no-code environment where you can plug together certain basic logics. Also workflows, etc., can be in this in-app lightweight extensibility added to a public cloud scenario. But of course, you can also use the so-called business technology platform, BTP, and connect that to your S4 public cloud. And there you have the possibility actually to really add functionality. And that's also the way to go. So as soon as you hit the wall within S4HANA private cloud, it's always advisable that you go outside of that solution, that you do not start to tweak too much within the public cloud. That's asking for problems. You really need to see that you can then extract that functionality, that capability that you actually want. You implement it into BTP and you integrate it between BTP and S4HANA public cloud. This keeps your solution clean, upgradable, which, as I mentioned, is forced in scheduled updates twice a year. If I'm not mistaken, it's in February and in August every year that these upgrades are basically like a bus schedule run throughout the whole population of S4HANA public cloud customers.
Yes, you have mentioned these colors again, greenfield, brownfield. We definitely have to discuss this in a future episode. So if you're more interested in these, stay in touch. But for now, when we talk about these implementations, greenfield, brownfield, How do these options play into the private vs public cloud decision?
Yeah. So I think I mentioned it shortly before. Public cloud supports only the greenfield implementation. That means you're starting from scratch with clean and standardized processes, and it's not the business that asks from you what to do, but you explain as SAP consultant, as IT department, you explain to the business what actually can be done. So a business can decide, I need 1 company code, 2 company codes, 5 company codes, but it cannot say how certain postings are actually supposed to be done in a very customized way. So that's not possible. So you are telling how the system works rather than business comes and says, I expect this and that. And I'm hammering a bit on that because this is often forgotten. People are nodding when going into a public cloud implementation project and say, yes, I understand. We have to go standard, yada, yada, yada. But actually then in the project, they say, but we absolutely have to do X, Y, Z. I have to order this pencil exactly in this way. If you are in these type of discussions, I'm really advising either to completely revise the project or to stop the project, because this will never end well. In the private cloud, you have, of course, both options. You have the green field, the brown field. We also will speak about the so-called blue field, which is a sort of selective data transition from your ECC. And there you have actually all the different options, all the different possibilities. And there we will also have dedicated episodes on all these colors that we just mentioned, because this is quite confusing. And honestly, I also do not like too much these colors. But there I will also go into detail later on in one of these episodes. What's a bit the unfortunate element when using these colors. But I hope this explains it. So private cloud, any transition is possible, starting from scratch, upgrading, or doing a selective data transition. Public cloud means you start from scratch, following the script of SAP standard processes.
In terms of pace, can you tell the listeners if one model is better suited for a faster go live?
Yeah, so I think there also we see in the market a conviction that public cloud is always faster and private cloud is always heavy. And there I would like to be a bit more nuanced. It is absolutely true if you would basically look over all the thousands of S4 implementations, and I think we have in the meantime also 1,000 public cloud implementations globally. You would say that the average runtime of these projects in public cloud is faster. It's faster because you actually your main job is explaining. Your main job is making the data transformation. Your main job is to integrate that system with other systems. But you do not have a lot of building, solution building in these projects. No? And that, of course, comes with a lot higher speed. Where you have certainly a lot less costs. But, of course, also you pay the price in less flexibility. In private cloud, we see that these projects can be quite short, as we have proven in a number of very successful implementations that ran not longer than 12 months. But they also can take really long. We know, both of us know the customer who has gone in a 4 or 5 year implementation, unwanted long project runtime. So private cloud is pretty much as we also saw it in on-premise. If this is not well managed, then you have here quite long implementation times with high, let's say, budgets, but also with significant risks. So in general, you can have it as a takeaway. Public cloud is mostly shorter, very often also less expensive. But you also can run a private cloud implementation in a slim way and succeed if you set them up correctly in quite a short amount of time.
Yes, let's continue to talk about money. Imagine you're a CFO. How do these cost models compare between the private or public cloud?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. I just try to put myself into a CFO mindset or in a head of accounting mindset. So basically, in the public cloud, you have a lot less budget lines. So you basically have your subscription. Yes, you do have some support that you need in order to adapt it, maybe also for integration with other systems. You need to foresee something. But basically, this one budget line includes infrastructure, operations, upgrades. And so that budget-wise, a public cloud is quite predictable and relatively lean. In a private cloud, you have a number of other budget lines that come on top. So you have cost drivers, which is, of course, your infrastructure choice, where you deploy it. You have then also the implementation complexity. So depending on how lean or how complex you are running your implementation, this can not only take a lot more time, but also can cost a lot more money. By the way, not only during implementation, but also then when supporting these additional customizations and additional developments. And also very important, you always need to foresee people also in a private cloud scenario that are skilled enough that so they can basically communicate with SAP. Quite often I heard things like, basically we don't need anyone in SAP anymore. That's absolutely not true. You don't need the same profiles. You don't need the same skills because a lot is done by SAP. But actually you need much more a coordinator of all these offered services because SAP will not do anything by themselves. They act on your command. If you say do this, do that, then they act. But for that, you need, of course, someone knowledgeable who knows how to navigate with these services and how to communicate with SAP and ask the right things at the right time.
Yeah, I get the feeling that public cloud is always a cheaper option. Or am I missing something here? Are there hidden trade-offs maybe?
Well, it's not always cheaper. Unfortunately, I have seen also public cloud implementations which went in the tens of millions of euros, which you would not expect. But for simple standard use cases, it's absolutely correct. If you are a small, medium enterprise, if you're not belonging to one of these industries that I mentioned before, if you're not operating in one of these countries that I mentioned before, then definitely you have a good chance to really implement an S4 system in quite a cost-efficient way. However, if you are going off-road with your public cloud, you will also see that in your budget, in your costs. And then you could even see also that a well-managed private cloud might be even the more cost-effective option if you go in a more on a life cycle perspective. Because then basically you all these, let's say, you use these flexibilities that are provided by private cloud, which you basically would need to add outside of a public cloud in a BTP. And if you then make the full account on both sides, we also saw scenarios where we have seen that private cloud actually turned out to be the cheaper option or the less expensive option for the same functionality, for the same capabilities that are reflected.
You mentioned that SAP Public Cloud receives updates twice a year.
Yes, correct.
How does a client typically deal with this continuous innovation then?
Yeah, that's a huge change for an organization. If we look honestly into the past, we see very few customers who have regular upgraded their systems, which basically ended up that every upgrade was a true project. It seemed to be like a once every 5-year program. Everyone had to go through a serious testing. Of course, test cases from the past were either not documented or forgotten where they were stored, or also just simply not applicable anymore. And of course, this is a completely different approach when you go to the public cloud. In public cloud, you need to change your organization into an organization that anticipates twice a year these upgrades. And this comes with an test tenant, the test tenant that you will receive a couple of weeks before the actual upgrade, has your system on the new version. And then you can basically run all your tests. I here very much recommend to go into automated test scenarios, but of course not everything is possible to automate. You also need to get this rhythm into your organization that people foresee time in February and January, beginning February and July, August for testing, because at the end you cannot postpone this upgrade indefinitely. I think I heard that the one or the other week is possible, but at a certain moment in time, SAP pushes the button and brings you on the new solution. And if then an interface is not working, then of course you have the new release, but not necessarily the functionality that you need. And so basically your organization needs to come into or needs to swing into a rhythm of a continuous adoption of new functionality. This should not be seen as a burden. This should be really seen as something where you are receiving innovations. You get in that test tenant, you get an exposure to the new functionalities that are provided. And that, of course, helps you really to evolve as an organization with newly supported elements, like, for example, in AI, but also in other automations that under normal circumstances, you would not have that in your ERP system if you upgrade it once every 2, 3, or 4 years.
And what about the private cloud then? Do the clients have more control over these upgrade cycles or not?
Yes, absolutely. You can leave out certain upgrades. However, you still have to follow certain releases over time, because otherwise you risk not to have support by SAP anymore. So what we see is that since 2023, S4 Private Cloud has received any additional upgrade after 2 years. That means the next release will be out in 2025. Each release has a number of so-called feature pack stacks that is comparable to the formal enhancement packages under ECC, and also receives so-called support pack stacks. This is basically bug fixings. But this is at your control whether you will apply them, yes or no. It's basically an offer, pretty similar to your ECC, only that you cannot indefinitely postpone the upgrades.
But then how should we eventually make this decision? How do clients know which model is right for them?
Yeah.
Are there indicators maybe, or?
Yeah, indeed. So the question is actually how to start, how to start with this decision-making process. And if you are not happy with your present ECC because it's too complex, too expensive, not agile, not answering the needs of your business, then the needle swings towards a greenfield, and then the option whether you go for a public cloud or for a private cloud is open. And then you should start with a so-called digital discovery assessment. We have actually enhanced the so-called DDA, Digital Discovery Assessment by SAP, with our insights from our projects in public cloud ourselves, and we have actually enhanced this DDA in a very customized and tailored way by PwC. And there we look at the current system landscape. We look much more in detail about process complexity, what are the actual client needs. And so there we come to a much more qualified decision at the end than we see often in a standard digital discovery assessment by SAP. And if you see that your basically complying with the requirements, public cloud is really a great choice. It's a lot less headache in the long term in these cases. But of course, private cloud offers much more runway. So if you have very complex requirements, complex global tax models also, then in these cases, very often we see that private cloud is more suitable for you.
To maybe help the clients a little bit more, do you see a trend in the market? Are there more companies moving towards public cloud or more companies to private cloud?
Yeah, so we definitely see or saw in the past a very slow adoption of public cloud. It was for all seen in service industry, like for example, our own business, like the consulting space. There we saw public cloud quite well adopted, but for the rest, we saw until 2 years ago, I would say, not a lot of interest and even less concrete adoption. This has changed. So public cloud is actually over the past 2 years has seen a lot of interest in the market, and we also have seen an enormous increase in projects. This is also because the solution is in the meantime much more mature. But of course, we also have to state that not all the interests convert into a decision for a public S/4HANA public cloud. So right now, private cloud remains strong in the industries, especially the ones that are not supported are basically entirely covered with private cloud. Also in areas with high regulatory requirements, and also with high integration demands, there private cloud still remains the preferred choice. Still, I believe we will see some changes on that question going forward. Also, because on the one hand side, because it is the big bet of SAP, and SAP puts a lot of investments in this choice. But on the other hand side, also when I look at our own offering, we have the PwC Cloud ERP Express solution. What's behind that? That's basically a pre-configured solution, S/4HANA solution, where you in a very short amount of time have a working system. We see here well-defined core finance and controlling processes that simply speed up the whole implementation and make sure you get the things right from the start. We will put the link to that also in the show notes. You will see there Cloud ERP Express. This is this solution that I spoke about earlier, and there you will also find more information what is actually included in that one.
Yes, we will definitely put it in the notes. But looking into the future, Torsten, how do you see SAP evolving these models?
Yeah, so what we have already today is that we have scenarios with so-called two-tier ERP. What does that mean? Yeah, some companies say the complexity of my headquarter cannot fit into a public cloud. So in my headquarter on group level, I run my private cloud. But I have a number of small subsidiaries. For them would be the private cloud way too much, would be way too complex. So for them, I implement a public cloud. And you can let them communicate because both ERPs speaking the same language. So it is then easy to synchronize, to consolidate then numbers from these, I would say, slave public cloud systems across the globe, across your smaller entities, in one big group S4 private cloud system. SAP itself is clearly pushing, not only in public cloud, there it's mandatory, but also for private cloud, for the so-called clean core. What does that mean? Don't make any modifications in your SAP system that later on will keep you from upgrading or that will cause any problems in operating it. This clean core strategy is also a clear indication that in the long term, SAP wants you to get used to some guardrails, and in the long term, they want you to be ready for the public cloud. Over time, I think we will see much more interoperability with a SAP business technology platform. And this is basically that platform where you can add additional functionality. And these would be then connected to either a public cloud or a private cloud, enabling some hybrid strategies where the core stays clean and innovation happens actually externally on this BTP platform.
That's it, Torsten. I think we can wrap up this episode.
Yes, Faisal, let's do that.
But we also have still some good news, Torsten.
Yes, exactly. Shall I just unfold it a bit? So yes, we will have on the 11th of September 2025, starting as of 1 p.m., we will actually put the registration link in the note. We will have a webinar about SAP Public Cloud, also with like the leader of the competence center for public cloud. He will not only tell you what is the right and best way how to get there, but also answer your questions. And so if you dare click on the link, you will definitely get a very good session. And during that webinar, we have quite some interactivity that we have foreseen. So it's not only a one-sided story, but you will you can basically there also get all your questions answered from the experts firsthand. So I think that's it, Faisal.
Yes, indeed. Then that's it. I hope to see you in this webinar. Thanks for listening. And again, subscribe and share it with everyone you know. Have a good one.
Yes, have a good one. Enjoy. Bye.